Good afternoon, colleagues, and good afternoon to all the participants. It's now 1:05. My name is Lawrence, and I am from the Research Capacity Development Unit. Can I just ask if I am audible enough? If everybody can hear me, please indicate with a thumbs up if everybody can hear me with a thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Please note that this session is being recorded and the recording has started. Welcome to the Research Capacity Development Unit at the Postgraduate School, University of Johannesburg. My name is Lawrence, and I'm delighted to be your moderator for today's session. Uh, Before I begin, I would like to thank all the attendees for taking their time to join, and most importantly, I would like to thank our presenter, our facilitator, Dr. Kemi Chuarawara, for availing himself and for honoring our invite to facilitate the session on the title Faculty of Humanities Proposal Writing and Submission Procedures. Before introducing Dr. Kenny to you, I would like to go over a few housekeeping rules, of which I would like to think most of you are aware of. If you do have any question during the session, please raise your virtual hand. And if you do not wish to speak, please type your question in the chat box and I will then indicate to the presenter to address the question. And as I've said in the beginning, that this session is being recorded and the presentation slides will also be requested from our presenter and we will post this on our model communities by the end of this week. And also please note that I will be posting a feedback survey in the chat session. So we use this for our reporting and we also would like to ask you guys to fill it in so that this also ensures that you get a certificate of attendance and also to provide some kind words to our facilitator. Um, Before I begin, can you please allow me to read Dr. Kenny's bio to your hearing? Dr. Kenny Chuwarawara is a senior lecturer at the Department of Anthropology and Development Studies in the University of Johannesburg, Faculty of Humanities. Prior to assuming this role, he served at various institutions as, among others, a researcher and lecturer. He has a long history from 2012 of working in the Writing Center. In 2023 and 2024, he was a research writing consultant in the Research Capacity Development Unit at the University of Johannesburg Postgraduate School. He is passionate about research and routinely reviews for national and international journals. One of his greatest joys is to equip and inspire the next generation of researchers. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Kenny. Thank you for honoring our invite and thank you for giving this presentation. You can now proceed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lawrence, and thank you to the Research Capacity Development Unit for the invitation. Can you hear me, though? Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. I can see you, Dr. Kenny. Can everybody please just indicate with a thumbs up if you can see the facilitator there? All right,
Yeah, I see
perfect.
thumbs up there.
Okay.
All right, thank you so much. I will just keep my video on for now, but I will switch it off when I start. So thank you again for inviting me. You've heard that I've worked in the Writing Center and I've also been at the Research Capacity Unit. And so I feel honored to speak to you today, having been a research writing consultant. I say that because I'm going to focus my talk more on writing the proposal, because I'm more interested in writing. So in terms of the procedures, I will touch on them, but I will still defer you to the departments where you come from within the Faculty of Humanities. And but I'll touch on some elements of it, but I'll focus mostly on proposal writing. I just want to get a sense though, because what I want to do is that I want to make it a bit informal. I don't want to really be formal. Perhaps it's because I'm usually kind of an informal individual, but I want us to relax and just, you know, enjoy this talk. So feel free to jump in at any time if you want to say something, you want to ask, you want to add, or you want to give an example of something that I would have said. So feel very free to do so. Also, I want to perhaps at this stage just get a sense of who is in the room. Where are you in terms of your proposal? Have you started working on your proposal? Are you still thinking about what to write? Have you submitted to your supervisor, to the department, to the faculty? Where are you? So perhaps I could hear from a few people in the meeting, or some are welcome to type. But if there are those who want to speak, please feel free to speak. I just want to hear from you. You can introduce yourself and tell me where you are in terms of your proposal writing phase. Thank you.
I've also allowed all the mics, so if you do wish to speak, you can just unmute your mic and you may go ahead and make your contribution. If you do not wish to speak, please also type in the chat session or the Q&A, and I will be able to indicate to the presenter. Okay, Aziz, I see you have your mic enabled. You may speak. So Nkosi, I see you also have your mic enabled. If you do wish to speak, please just go ahead.
Hi everyone. Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Oh yes, yeah. This is Gibson Zimande here. I'm doing a PhD in anthropology, and my current topic is the social life of crystal meth in South Africa, and I'm doing ethnograph on the Westlands, in Johannesburg. Yeah, basically.
Thank you for that.
Basically.
Go ahead.
Next week, perhaps next week on Monday, I have to submit my proposal to my supervisor, Professor Stigler. But for now, I'm still waiting to have a meeting with Rolenzo at the postgraduate school for some stuff on writing, and hopefully by Monday, and then I'll be done, and then I'll be submitting to my supervisor, and then to the departmental review after.
Thank you so much for that. That really helps. So you are almost towards the end of your proposal writing, the first round of it. You're about to submit to the supervisor and then to the department. Thank you so much. And you also mentioned that Gibson, you are doing your PhD. That means you have done your master's, and so you are familiar with proposal writing, and so that helps. I'll be drawing on your experience and as I present. Thank you for that. Anyone else who wants to introduce themselves and where they are in terms of their proposal writing? I think I'll just give 2-3 more, and then those who want to type are welcome to do so.
Hi, Doctor, how are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Yes, it's Elvis speaking. I'm busy with my proposal on religious studies, but now I thought I'm done until I was asked what is the importance of my research on that proposal. So I'm struggling to get the importance of my research, but the whole proposal is structured very well. So the recommendation from the supervisor is that I must go through my literature review and be able to get the importance of my research. That's the only critical thing that I think agently I need beside others. Thank you. It's Elvis Mofuke.
Thank you, Elvis, for that. So I guess you're doing a PhD, right?
Yes, it's a PhD.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you for that. Thanks. Let's hope I touch on that and try to speak to that as well. Thanks. Anyone else who has a burning desire to say something before we continue? Someone else wanted to say something earlier.
Yes, I saw Aziz's mic was enabled, but we do have a
I
contribution
see
in the
it.
chat box. Yes, it's
Okay.
Dineo. He said, Masters in Corporate Communication. I'm busy with my proposal and I need guidance.
Thank you for that. You said the name is again Dineo, right? When you read, you said Dineo, right? Yeah. Thank you, Dineo, for that. And thanks for coming to this. So let me then try to.
There's another mic enabled, Doc. Aziz, did you want to say something? I see your mic is enabled. Did you want to make a contribution?
I think Aziz made a contribution, or I'm not sure. Okay, I'm all right. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Now that's fine. If we cannot hear you, then you can type in the chat box. Okay, we can proceed.
Can you? All right. Awesome. Thank you so much to everyone who typed and those who contributed. And I guess some of you are still also at the levels that have been mentioned. So you felt maybe there's no need to say again. Thank you so much. Lawrence, can you see my slides?
Yes, I can see your slides. They're not in presenter mode yet.
Can you see them now?
Yes, I can see them. I can see them perfectly, but they're not in presenter mode.
That's how is that possible? Let's see. Right. How about now? Is it clear? Can you see it now?
Yes, I can see them, but they're not in presenter mode. I don't know if
So you're saying
everybody
they're not
can.
in slide. They're not in
Yes,
slide.
yes, they are not in presenter mode yet, but we can
Okay.
see your slides. Yes.
Okay. That's gonna be.
Dr. Juaran,
Yes.
can you just navigate to almost okay, I've seen you have gone out. All right, we'll wait for
Yeah.
you to share again.
Let me see again to see why it's not. I'm guessing you can see them now, but still they're not.
Yes, just go down. Let's try closer to where you can magnify there to that presenter icon on your at the bottom right, where it says notes. Then there are those tabs that are there. Just
Yes,
click
they.
on that one.
Okay, maybe let me try one last. You see, the challenge is that my Teams is not working as yet. And so what I do is I'm using the page, the web page. So let me try to actually use the entire, let me see if I do this, whether you'll be able to, the entire screen. Let me see if I do this. How about now?
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Thanks for that. Let me check though. I want to try presenter view. When I do this, can you see two of my slides, or you can see one?
We can see two.
All right. I see. Let me.
Hey, I can help you here. Good afternoon, guys.
It's
So
fine.
you click on display and then you got it.
No.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good. All right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
perfect.
Thanks for
Perfect.
that. All right.
Sure.
All right,
Thanks.
perfect. We can now see them. You can proceed. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm having a challenge with my team, so days that I have to update and all that. Okay. So let's begin then. So proposal writing, and as I've mentioned before, I'm going to focus more on the proposal writing and not on the submission procedures, but I will still touch on them as well. And please feel free to ask if you have any questions. I'll be sure to entertain them and try to see if I can answer them, but I'll also try to see if anyone in the room can assist. Dr. Gabriel, it's good to hear from you as well. Feel free to jump in if necessary. Now, I'm going to talk first about the three phases of writing your research proposal. And here, of course, these three phases do not only pertain to the proposal writing, but they pertain to any kind of writing. And I'll talk about those three phases. And of course, you do know about these phases already, but perhaps you've never really thought about them that way. But for some of you, you have heard about them, and it would be more of a revision. I'll talk as well about understanding a research proposal, because we have to understand it in order to write it and craft it in such a way that it's appealing and it covers the subject that has to be covered. We'll talk about the importance of a research proposal, the criteria, which is quite helpful to look at the criteria for judging a research proposal. And here then I touch on the procedures, because I have an example from the department in terms of what the internal reviewers will look at. And so I'll show you the criteria, what they look at when they are judging the proposal. So throughout, I'll try to talk about these things as I progress. The topic selection, I might not dwell on it because I see that many of you have started already. We are in May, so if you got registered around January, February, many of you would by now have started writing. So I won't dwell much on the topic selection. Then I'll get into the format. Now, these formats differ, and so this is just an example, and there might be some other things missing, or there are some things that you want to add. Feel very free to do so. So there's the background rationale for the study, the aim of the research, literature review. So I won't dwell on everything because I want to concentrate more on the writing part. And I'm going to look at certain parts that I think are very tricky to write. And for you and for me and for many people, having worked in the postgraduate school, I came across a number of students who struggled with, like a literature review. What is really a literature review? And I think Elvis as well, you have been asked to go back to that literature review. So hopefully when I talk about these things, we'll be able to address these, what to do, what not to do in writing a literature review, research problem, research design methods, the ethics statement, and all that. So that's what I'm going to do today in my offering. Now, let's first deal then with the three phases of writing. So there are three phases of writing. And as I say, this can be writing a proposal or writing a dissertation or writing a thesis, depending on the level that you are. But the first one is the pre-writing phase. That is, before you start writing, there are certain things that you think about, things that you do. And so I'll talk about this pre-writing phase because it's important, because it guides you and informs what you write about when you now turn to the writing phase. So the second phase then will be the writing proper. So this is where you put pen to paper or you put fingers to the keyboard, you begin to write. But before you do that, you plan and think about a number of things, and I'll touch on those very shortly. There is also a third phase called the post-writing phase. Now, this post-writing phase doesn't necessarily mean you are no longer writing, but you are done with the bulk of the work in the writing phase. You still write again, but there are certain things that you do in this post-writing phase. And as we talk about proposal writing, I think it's imperative that we think about this pre-writing phase when getting started, the writing phase, and the post-writing phase. Now, you will see that this process is not always linear. You might get into the writing phase and go back almost to the pre-writing phase and do certain things and go forward into the post-writing phase, and you realize that there are certain things that are still missing that require you to go back to the writing phase. So don't think of it as a linear one. Of course, there is some kind of linear way of going about it, but also know that you'll be going back and forth. And so even when your supervisors ask you to go back to the introduction and sharpen the research questions or sharpen the proposal, don't feel, well, we passed this already. It's part of this whole process. Writing is really a process. You go forward, you go backward, and all that. So we just need to be mindful and to be patient with our supervisors and to be patient with ourselves as well. Now, let me start then with the pre-writing phase. Now, I can't see if anyone raised their hand, if anyone types anything, so I can't see. So Lawrence, please feel free to let me know, and anyone can just jump in as well. But yeah, Lawrence, please do let me know if there is a question or someone wants to say something. Let me just to make sure, is everyone still clear? Are you still hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Yeah, can see the thumbs up. I think we're all clear. We can proceed. I'll be monitoring the chat box and I'll be monitoring the hands as well. And I will notify you, Doc. Thank you.
That's good to know. Thank you so much. Thanks for that. All right. So in this pre-writing phase, the first phase, there is what we call a task analysis. Uh, um, I wish I had more time. I would have wanted to ask whether anyone has heard about what a task analysis is. But maybe I can pause briefly. Is anyone aware of what a task analysis is? Whether it's for a proposal or any kind of work that you are doing, what is task analysis?
Doc, I think if you can just briefly explain, just so that we probably save time. I am also not really clear about it.
Awesome. Now I hear you. But is there anyone who knows about it? And then I can jump in. I firmly believe in participation. And so sometimes it helps when people do participate. But I do get your point. All right. So a task is something that you are given to do. Say in this instance, you are given an essay to write. So discuss Trump's meeting with President Cyril Ramaphosa, for example. Now, that's a task you've been given to do. So sometimes they can say in 1,000 words, discuss this and all that. So when you do task analysis, you are looking at what you have been asked to do. You haven't started writing. That's why it falls under the pre-writing phase. You're looking at the task. What are the instruction words? You have been instructed to do what? Is it to list? No, it is to discuss. So you need to understand what discussing means. So you have to discuss. What are you discussing? Trump's and Ramaphosa's meeting, and you are being limited to how many words? You're limited to 1,000 words. And so that's something that you do before you start writing. So that's part of the task analysis. You think about what is required of me. In this case, it is to discuss. So what is required of you now for this proposal is to write, and often they tell you, it might not be more than 6 pages or 7 pages. Now look at the guidelines in your department. But it's important to know, so that's part of the task, and how long should the proposal be? Who is going to grade or mark this proposal? Because the person is going to grade. What are they looking for? What is the marking criteria or the grading criteria? When is this proposal, this piece due? Because again, it has a bearing on the amount of time you have and the amount of, of information that should be put. If we are saying it in 1,000 words, you can't write 5,000 words, and you can't just write one sentence. So again, in this pre-writing phase, by now you should figure out how long should this proposal be, the final one that you send. Now, sometimes some supervisors will say, don't concern yourself with the length of the proposal for now. For example, in the initial one, some of them might say just to write. Then at a later stage, they'll ask you to now reduce and cut down so that you fall within the page limits. So what am I writing about? So the content itself, who is going to read the document? So this is the pre-writing phase when you are thinking about what to write. It's not a waste of time to engage quite carefully in this pre-writing phase, because I have seen people who start writing without a clear understanding of what they are writing, and often they might still write well, but they are not answering the question. And so if you are writing a proposal, what should be in this introduction? What should be in a literature review? What should be in your theories? What should be in your whatever different sections that you have? So it's quite important for you to get a clear sense of that. So when I said who is going to grade and what is the marking criteria, already I'm touching on that internal review. So I took this from what I've been asked to. I've been asked to review one proposal, for example. And I think about 2 days ago, I reviewed as well another one. And so these are the things that in the department, I was asked to make comments on. So the plagiarism screening report, if it's not applicable, I put that one. Is it satisfactory in terms of, so let's look at the writing skills, for example. Are they satisfactory? Or maybe there's need for clarity, or it's incomplete, it's unsatisfactory. And then I provide a comment here. If you think about the research problem, so I've put these things here so that you are aware ahead of time of the kinds of things that you are going to be graded on. So they want to know the research problem. Is it clear? The questions, are they clear? The literature review, theory, all these kinds of things. And you're going to have access to this recording and to the slides. So you'll be able to see all these kinds of things. So for a PhD, for example, that's why when Elvis said that I've been asked to go back and talk about the importance, and I was also thinking, are you doing a PhD? Because for a PhD, unlike for the masters, for the PhD, there is a section, the last one, they are asking you for the original contribution. What is it that is new, that is fresh, that you are contributing here as a PhD? And so as we progress, I'll be touching on some of these elements, but it's important for you to have a sense of what is required. And so this is the second part of this. I took a screenshot of it. So we look at all these different kinds of things. And so it's important in terms of the procedures to be mindful of this. And I would say that, I think, Gibson, you said that you're about to submit, and someone said that they thought they were done and they still have to do certain things. It's important to budget a bit of time as well for some of the documents that have to be completed. And so this, in the pre-writing phase, it's important to think about all these kinds of things before you progress. Okay. It's really the planning phase where you are thinking about what you want to do, why do you want to do that, when do you plan to submit, and all that, because it informs everything you are about to do. We turn then to after the pre-writing phase, you now move to the writing phase. In this writing phase, that's where we spend the bulk of our time. And of course, when I talk about writing, I'm assuming that, and we know already, that you'll be reading a lot as well. So it's reading, thinking, and writing, really. It's not just, so as you are writing, you're thinking, you're also reading, you're presenting it into your proposal, into the different sections of the proposal. So here you want to present a coherent piece of writing. Now, you want to present something that makes sense, something that, you see, writing really is around storytelling. You are telling a story, but it's in written form. And so what is important is to make sure that the message you are trying to communicate passes on to the receiver. So in order to do that well, there is this thing that I talk about a lot. And I do know that, you are doing your master's and PhD. So you have your own way of writing, but I just want to introduce you as well, or maybe to remind you of this other way of writing. This one where you focus on what you want to say. So again, how do you go about this? So if, for example, you are saying that you want to submit your work at your supervisor on the 30th of June, for example, you would need to plan yourself in that pre-writing phase. You need to think about, when should my first draft be ready? The first draft ready for yourself, because often because of time constraints, we often think about just the final one, then we submit to the supervisor. But as you will see later when I turn to the post-writing phase, it's important to think about a number of drafts. So if I'm submitting on the 30th of June, I need to have maybe the first due date, maybe on the 30th of, okay, maybe on the 7th of June, and then the second one maybe on the 20th of June, and then the last one, then I submit to the supervisor. Why is that important? Because in the first draft, you can do this. You can focus on what you want to say. Of course, you're getting what you want to say from reading, from thinking, and from writing, but you're presenting what you want to say. The what part is quite important because that's really the crux of what you are presenting, the message you're trying to convey. So that has to be clear. And sometimes and often we are told, think about the reader when you're writing, right? We hear that a lot. And of course, it's impossible not to think about the reader because we've heard about that. And we also write to our readers and audience. So we have to think about that. I'm not saying you should never think about it, but I'm saying focus more on what you want to say in the introduction, in the literature review, of course, based on what you are reading. So that focus on what you are saying. Then later now, so this will be drafted 2 and perhaps drafted 3, you are now looking at, is the message that I'm trying to say clear to me? Okay, it is clear to me. This is what I want to say. Then number 2, you want to think about the reader now, how it should be said. You should consider that a bit later in terms of detail to think about, will the reader understand the message, the what I was trying to say? Will they understand it? And so when it comes to this one now, you are polishing the work in order for your message to be clear, to get to the. So I've seen some people do it, like they do everything at once, but sometimes it derails progress because you are trying to perfect everything and you're trying to put a comma where there has to be a comma and a full stop there and all that. Often when I write my first draft, I don't want anyone to look at my first draft because often it's not perfect. I'm not trying to align to the conventions of academic writing. I'm just trying to put across the message that I want to put across. And so that's often what I do. I focus on the what, and then later I think about how it should be said. Is it conveying and is it clear to the reader the message I'm trying to put across? So this first focusing on the what is called the writerly best writing. You're thinking about yourself as the writer. What is the message you want to put across? The writer, you are the important person in this matrix. Then the second part, you are thinking about the reader. Will the reader understand what me as the writer I want to convey? So the writerly best writing versus the readerly best writing. I say these things because now if something else works for you, that's fine. But I have also seen people who write well. You have seen even people like this who write well or who speak well. But when you listen to the content in terms of the substance of what they are saying, it's not there. It's because they're focusing more on the how something has to be said. But the what part, because in that task analysis, we should have figured out what is required in this section. That's the what part. And what do I convey here? And then later I think about, will the reader, the recipient, understand the message I'm trying to convey? So the writerly best writing versus the readerly best writing. Any questions on that before I move to the last phase of academic writing? Are there people who have found this useful in terms of their own writing before this meeting, for example? We've been using that, or perhaps because of time issues, you just do everything at once. You don't have a chance to have a second draft or a third draft.
At the moment, there's no questions, Doc. I think you're quite clear, so you can proceed. Thank you.
Proceed. That's perfect. Okay, so the third phase, the third and final phase is what is called the post-writing phase. You are done writing, you've presented what you believe to be a coherent piece of writing, you've focused on the what you want to say, and then later you have considered how it should be said. But this is now that part again where the how it should be said comes into play. Here, this post-writing phase is really the revising phase. You are approaching your writing as a reader. So you're thinking about the reader now. So often it's helpful to think about finishing the draft and then you give it a day or two. If you don't have enough time, you can give it an hour or 30 minutes at least, so that your mind is away from it and you do something else. When you come back and look at it through fresh eyes, often you'll be surprised at what you wrote. Did I write this? This is not clear. So if it's not clear to you, it won't be that clear to the reader. And so this second part is quite important. So you revise the first draft in terms of the way information is communicated. You also consider the structural conventions of a particular section. Often in a particular section, there's a way to go about something. Say, for example, in the literature review, if you have to use a funnel approach where you start in terms of the global outlook, then you come to Africa, then you come to South Africa, and then you focus at your, maybe in Joburg now, that's the case study there. Have I done so in my presentation? If that is the way to go about it, start broadly before you zero in on something. Then you look at the flow of the argument. Does it flow? Does it make sense? Or it's like I'm jumping from one thing to the other. There is another element here which deals with the effective use of linking devices. These are words like the words like so transitional words like however, in addition. If they are used appropriately, they are very helpful. But sometimes people overuse them. And so if you overuse them and every sentence has a however, in addition, so therefore, and all that becomes too much. But if it's well placed, it helps in terms of the reader. You know, when you're going to Pretoria from Joburg, we don't see every kilometer, then you are not taught 10 kilometers, 9 kilometers, 8 kilometers. Now you see 10 kilometers, then maybe 5 or whatever, but there is an interval that is reasonable. So even in terms of these signposts, it's important for you not to overdo it, but also if it's necessary, it's helpful to have them. You think about unnecessary repetition that has occurred in this post-writing phase. You look at the referencing conventions. I have heard of proposals that have been returned because the referencing did not align to the required referencing style. Now, something as simple as referencing, is delaying the whole process, so you don't want to do that. A variety of sources. Have I only leaned on one source or I've drawn from a variety of sources? Again, this is sometimes context specific. If in your department you have to lean on one, for example, you're writing on this particular author, that's fine. But often, when you're looking at something, in order to be credible, want to see how many people are saying, how many witnesses are saying this. It's not just one individual. Here, I will talk about this when I come to the literature review as well. There has to be a focus on ideas and concepts and not names. Now, I guess there are exceptions where you can focus on names, but often, people don't want to be reading a lot about the names, like so-and-so, Chwara said this, and this one said that, and all that said that, okay. And often you see this, and I'll talk briefly about it when I come to the literature review. People want to know the concepts, the ideas, the arguments, not really the names. Of course, the names are important and who is saying them, but there's a way to put it across in such a way that it's not really a focus on names. And later I'll talk about that, what is often called in the literature review a laundry list. So I'll talk about that later. But it's important as you do so, like as you revise in this revising phase, have I brought in the kings and queens in the field? There are people in your field, in whatever you're writing on. There are people that are so important that if you don't draw on them, then people are going to say, but you haven't drawn on so and so. It's like if you're talking about South Africa and you don't talk about South Africa's liberation and you don't talk about Mandela, you don't talk about Tambo, it's people are going to wonder, have you never heard about these individuals, depending of course on the time that you're talking about. So think about those as well, the kings and queens in your own field. Who are they? What are they saying about this particular thing? Then when this is done, this is my final slide here. When it is done, you can request an outsider's perspective. That requires you then to plan your work in terms of when you are going to present, because then you want to send it. Someone mentioned here that you are seeing Dr. Lorenzo. That's asking for an outsider to have a look, and often a trained writing consultant, and we have them at the postgraduate school, a number of them. and they can meet with you online or in person. And so it helps because even sometimes they're not in your field, but when they are reading, they're looking at how did you move from this idea to this idea? I don't quite see the link. And so that kind of helps you because sometimes to you it's easy to see the link, but to another person who is reading, they can't quite tell. So they check gaps in the understanding of the argument. And sometimes these gaps occur because of inappropriate or inadequate or ineffective use of the linking devices that I spoke about earlier. All right. Now, if there are any questions, please feel free to ask. I need to keep going. But if there are questions, feel free to ask. So what is a proposal? This you know, that's why I took a bit of time talking about the first part. All these things you know, and so I'm just reminding you of these things. A proposal is really a planning document. It plans your thinking about, it outlines your thinking about a research problem. So it's part of the planning. You want to embark on this journey. You want to go to Cape Town from Joburg. How do you plan to go there? Have you thought about how you want to go there? Are you flying there? Are you driving there? Okay, you're driving. Which way are you using? Are you going via Kimberley or via the other side? I'm forgetting now. Okay, so you need to show that you've thought about this. So if it's a methodology, which one are you using? Why are you using that and not the other one? So that why is very important, and it shows that you've thought about these kinds of things. So as you are writing, to go back to the title, writing, proposal writing, as you are writing, it's important for you to ask yourself at some point the why. So if you're saying you want to interview people, in-depth interviews, why? If you want to interview 20 people, why 20 people? If you want to have a focus group, why do you want to have focus groups? Because as a writer, you won't be there when the people who are going to review, whether internally in the department or in the faculty, you won't be there to say, oh, I did this because of 1, 2, 3. So let your paper then answer questions that the people who are going to read are going to ask. Now, I've come across some very nicely written documents. As I'm thinking already, so, but why did you do this? Then I already see an answer. And I'm thinking, okay, this is interesting, but why? And how are you going to do that? And why? And I see answers already as I go. So that's part of what you do in this proposal. So the final part here deals with, it's a sales document, which presents what is to be studied, how and why. So the selling part arises from, you have an idea that you think is quite interesting, but you want to convince a panel, the internal reviews that are going to allow you to then submit. If they're happy, they say you can then go ahead and submit to the faculty, and then the faculty then reviews and they give ethical clearance. They can stop your project or they can say, go ahead with this project. Now, this applies whether it's funding, whether funding proposals, or this is an academic proposal like the one you are developing. You want to have these ideas, but you want to be able to present them in a way that is convincing, that you buy us and we get on board with you and we get excited with you about this project you are doing. Okay. So what does writing this then entail? It entails moving from a research idea to a research problem. It also involves gaining clarity on the unit of analysis that you're going to be focusing on. Of course, selecting the research design. You might have a very interesting idea that you are researching on, but if the tools that you are using to examine that are not effective or they don't quite speak well to that particular issue, then we'll have a problem. So we need to think about all these kinds of things. I've already mentioned the need to conform to the style and the format of a proposal. If they're asking for 6 pages, make sure you have 6 pages, not 12. And if they're asking for 12, make sure you have 11 or 12 or somewhere there, but not 2. So it's important to think about these as you write. Now, why do I need a research proposal? It's a very important document that guides your work, and it's a guide. It's a useful document which guides you as a student. You will see that after a year or two, you might not be sure about where you are going. So, but it guides you in terms of, this is what I initially wanted to do, and I shouldn't forget about this. There might be some few minor changes here and there, but at least it kind of gives you a clear sense of where you are going. And so, and then it also gives the supervisor, it's almost like it's a contractual document. Your supervisor can say, but you said you want to do this. And you as a student say, well, I said I want to do this, okay? And then for funders as well, it provides, a clear sense, a guide to the funders. And then, of course, the rest of the academic community, you are engaged in an academic conversation. And so the rest of the academic community want to know that you have gone through the processes before you start doing certain things. Now, the criteria for judging.
Sorry, Doc.
Yeah.
We have a hand up by Elvis. Elvis, if you do want, please, yeah, you can go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, Doc. I'm not sure if you're still gonna go on that one, but maybe it's premature to ask this one. On the referencing, and when you start from the crafting your introduction, how wise is it to use these queens and kings of your field as referencing? Is it also, I notice when I read or look at other previous, dissertation theses and articles, you find somebody referencing this important person just on the introduction to draw the idea that maybe, let's say, you're talking about reconciliation. Immediately you think of Desmond Tutu. And now you find where he is actually saying a critical thing or important thing that will that will stand out on your whole work, and then you directly go and say, according to 2024, and then this is reconciliation, and this is where I'll be throwing my idea as you structure your introduction. I'm a bit confused there because others, they hardly used any referencing in the introduction and the abstract. I don't know if you're still gonna go there or am I too early? But
No.
I am asking this in relation to the kings and queens.
Yes. No, thanks, Elvis, for that. Thanks. Now, I want to be careful here that I don't say those who do not are doing something wrong, because, well, if they're being supervised, they're doing that maybe for a particular reason. I just want to say, though, and you are not too early because I'm still going to touch on certain elements like that, but I think I can just address it now. So you will see later that I'll talk about a literature review, and in that literature review, of course, it's a conversation going on in that, and that you want to join and want to contribute as well too. And perhaps in that literature review, you are showing, the strengths of the previous discussions and previous conversations, and where they agree and disagree, and perhaps gaps or tensions that still exist, and things that you feel you should still come and shed more light on. And so that's where your study comes in. When it comes to that introduction, then it's more really, it's called, so that introduction, some people even, or some scholars call it hook literature, hook as in HOOK. In other words, you also bring in literature in that introduction in order to hook the readers so that they know, because sometimes, after reading the introduction, people feel, okay, should I continue or should I not continue? Now, the abstract is a bit of a different one. Often in the abstract, of course, there are some exceptions, but often in the abstract, there isn't a lot of referencing. I'm talking about the few that I know in the introduction, but I've seen exceptions here and there. But in the introduction, often I see literature being brought in to substantiate things and to provide a motivation for this, a rationale for doing this. And so I'll touch on that, but I just want to say that you can, you can if you want to, unless your supervisor tells you otherwise. Then you don't have to. But as far as I know, in the introduction, you can bring in literature to show, because we want to know where you're coming from, the motivation, where you're going. And so I'll touch on those things for now, okay? Or a bit later. So In terms of the criteria, but thanks for that question. In terms of the criteria for judging a research proposal, they want to know, do you have a clear idea of what you plan to research? So if it is reconciliation, do you know exactly what this issue is about? Are you aware of the debates on this? Are there outstanding issues that you feel that have to be interrogated, for example? You know, I know that people came in because this is lunchtime as well, and I know at 2 o'clock some people will be leaving, and also I want to try to move as well. But I just want to say something that I was going to say much later. It is that as you write, you need to know that you are developing as well as a writer. When you start out, you are a bit unsure. But as you keep writing, I want you to know that you are not just a student, you are a scholar. And you need to begin to develop confidence as you are researching, as you are writing. Because when people are reviewing your document, they want to know, do you have focus? Is it going somewhere? And for us to, because you can't be, you can't, that example I gave, if you want to go to Joburg, to Cape Town, you can't say, so where are you going? Then you say, maybe Cape Town or maybe Durban. No, at this stage now, if you're writing, you need to be clear about so when you are starting out, yes, you are still figuring things out. But as you progress in your drafts, you need to get to a point where you are joining these other scholars are your colleagues, and you want to make a contribution. Particularly if you are a PhD student, these are colleagues that, and like you say now, the kings and queens who have been there, but you also have something to add. And so don't trivialize your input as well. So as you are writing, I want you to think of yourself as an authority a little bit. And later I talk about not being overconfident, but not also being timid. So it's important. So for example, is it a topic worthy of academic study and significance? Now, this means you need to get to a point where you believe this document I'm writing, or this research area is important, it's significant. And for you to be able to do that, you need to show from literature and your thinking about this whole thing, to show that this is something valuable that you are presenting here. And it's difficult to do if you're not confident, and now I'm not saying when you're starting out right now, you have to be confident, but develop your confidence as you go by doing a lot of reading, academic material, reading in your area, so that you know the substance and you can say something because you can challenge certain things because you have read and you have understood. Do you demonstrate an adequate understanding of the debates in the literature on this topic? Now, if you want to make a contribution, obviously you need to understand what is being said, who is saying what, and all that. There are issues around feasibility you have seen in that document. They want to know when you are writing, is this feasible? Sometimes we have very interesting things that you are writing about, but it's not doable in the time. For example, you might want to interview presidents, but do you have access to the presidents? That's a bit different from another person who was a president before. I do know one who did his PhD at UJ. If such an individual wants to interview other presidents, maybe they have access to those. So feasibility is quite important. Not everything we want to research can be done in the time that is allocated. So they want to know, because they are also there to help you so that you don't get lost and do something that you won't be able to finish. Do you have a realistic idea of how you are going to tackle the investigation? Have you thought about this? So again, it goes back to that thinking part, that you read, you think, you write. Is it doable? I spoke about this. Then the referencing, does it conform to the accepted conventions? Is it faultless in terms of its technique? I've already mentioned that I won't dwell on this because many of you have started, but maybe I just need to say this. You need to focus on a problem. Often they start with a theme, you come to the topic, then there's a problem. Try to address a problem. There has to be really a problem that you are trying to address, a gap in literature, a puzzle, an ambiguity that you are seeing as you're reading, as you're observing, a tension that you may want to try to resolve, or to shed more light on. And where do we find the theme much? This I said, coursework, literature, and existing research project, your personal experience sometimes. How do I identify a problem? Now, the identified topic within the broader theme must focus on a problem, and often you hear a lot about a problem. So this problem is very important throughout. So as you are writing about the problem, that's why I was saying that in that introduction here, you are going to be writing even this problem as well. So as you do this, you are going to think about what is really the problem that I want to investigate. How is it a problem? I often ask people to answer this. So what is the problem you want to investigate? How is it a problem? And you can do this in 4 sentences or 5. All these questions I'm asking. What is the problem that you want to investigate? How is it a problem? What do we know about the problem? And of course, when we think about what do we know about this current problem, we have to know that from literature, right? So what do we know from the literature about this particular problem? Number 4, what don't we know as yet about this problem? Then number 5, what are the likely benefits of knowing about this problem? And I say likely benefits because you haven't conducted the study, so we don't know for sure that these are the benefits. So in probabilistic terms, what are the likely benefits of knowing this issue? So I've said, what is the problem that you want to investigate? How is it a problem? Is it a problem really? Then what do we know about the problem? And you're drawing from literature. What do we know? What don't we know? So that's almost like your gap there. What don't we know about this problem? And what are the likely benefits of knowing this particular issue? And of course, this requires you to do a lot of reading. I know you've heard this, but you have to read. And sometimes you read and you think you have known the problem, but you go back and you sharpen it so that it's very clear. And so it's important as you are writing to keep a notebook where you jot down all your ideas and you put a date on the notebook, because it's amazing, the progress you make. And sometimes, the idea that you would have discarded much earlier, you might come back to it a bit later and engage with it and make use of it in the future. All right. I wonder whether people want just like 2 minutes comfort break or something. Lawrence, let me know.
Yes, Doc. If that's fine with the participants, then that's okay. We can take 2, 3 minutes off. It depends on the participants. They can just indicate with a thumbs up, or if they want us to continue, then we can continue.
All right. So let me
Yeah.
hear from them. Then I turn to this second part. Yeah.
So with the thumbs up, meaning that we should continue, or we should take the break. Okay, okay, so the thumbs up are for continuing. Should we
For
continue?
continuing. Okay. All right. Awesome. Now let me
All right.
continue then.
Okay, let's continue, Doc. No problem.
All right. So these are some of the things I just want to touch on. I won't touch on everything, but I'll just highlight a few elements that I think are important. So what is the context that gave rise, for example? So you know about the title, the keywords, background, whatever. So if you think about all these in your introduction, so this context you would get from literature as well, the motivation for this, the importance thereof, all this you would get from literature, the aim of the research that you are doing. But let me talk about the literature review, because in many ways, this literature review anchors everything, because even what you're going to write in the introduction, again, is somehow informed here. So that's why I say you go back and forward and all that, because, it's not really a linear thing. Okay, so but let me briefly talk about writing a literature review. This literature review, you want to situate your research. I give this silly example. You might find it silly, but I find it helpful. If you were to get into a taxi right now and you want to go somewhere, and you got into the taxi and there were people already in the taxi that were talking about something, you won't get into the taxi and start talking, would you? No, because if you do, they will say, no, we are not talking about that issue. Oh, we have covered that already. We have agreed on that. So you want to get into this conversation. First, you need to listen to what people who have been there before you are saying. What are they saying about this issue? What are they agreeing on? What are they disagreeing on? who is agreeing, who is disagreeing. What are the things they are overlooking or they are missing? If you have identified those, then you come in now and you are saying, I really appreciate what was said here and what was said here and all that. But perhaps this is another thing we need to also think about. And so you come in and make a contribution. So this literature review, and sometimes what I have seen is that we forget that this is an academic conversation going on. So if you think of your own literature review in a proposal now, think about what others have done. Where have they agreed? Where have they disagreed? What is still missing that you think we may have to come now that warrants your study? Because then you can add to the body of knowledge, or you can shed more light on that particular issue. So it's an academic conversation. That's why I was saying you respect those who have spoken before you, but you also want to make an addition to that. So in doing that, it's important to avoid what is called a laundry list. Now, I've been talking nonstop. Anyone who knows what a laundry list is in a literature review? This will give me a chance to take my breath a little bit. I feel like I'm singing. Anyone who knows what a laundry list is, or a citation dump? But I'll start with the laundry list. All right. So let me take you through a laundry list. A laundry list. So in your first draft, you might have a laundry list. That's fine. But in your second, in your third, in your final draft that you submit, it mustn't be a laundry list. So a laundry list is whereby there is a huge focus on people's names. So the first paragraph starts with according to so and so. The next part, then the paragraph ends with another, surname. The next paragraph, so and so has said this, so and so has said that. Then at the end of the day, we now know a summary of what other studies have said, but we don't quite know your position in relation to these studies. You haven't brought these different scholars to tell a particular story. You haven't brought in, because remember, you are, so to speak, you are in, it's like, I don't know whether you watch news. I love news, so I do watch news a lot. And sometimes I watch these talk shows. And sometimes I feel bad for the host. If a host has very opinionated guests, maybe there are 3 guests from different political parties. And sometimes you see the host who is running the show. You see that the host is no longer running the show. The show is being run by people who have been invited to the show. And so sometimes that happens in a literature review where everything is about so and so has said that, so and so has said that, so and so has said that. And sometimes you hear supervisors say, but where is your voice? I can't hear you here. It's almost like you're just a follower following what others have said. So in terms of the writing part, in the first, you can do that summary. But later you want to think about, you want to focus on ideas, the ideas that are being presented. So in a paragraph, for example, one main idea is being presented. Who is writing about this idea now? You weave them in as you go. But often, that's why you would hear that we say often the topic sentence, you introduce that in your words. Now, if you still want to put, like a citation or whatever, you want to quote someone, usually it's advisable to paraphrase in the first sentence. You can't start with this direct quotation often. Okay, I don't want to say you can't or you can, but often, because your voice becomes very faint if you are just allowing everyone to say something and we are not quite clear on what you are saying. So the placing of the surname, it's a problem if the surname is placed at the beginning of the paragraph or of the sentence all the time. I'm not saying you can't do it at all, but it makes it so hard to read and to get to the idea. Now, think about my own surname. That's quite long. Chiwarawara. Now I say Chiwarawara, and so argue that. by the time you get to the idea, you've forgotten because there's this focus on the surname. Now, there are times when you have to focus on the surname. Perhaps that person is a queen or a king, and so that's that. But you can't overdo it. Where every part, and I've read literature reviews where everything is so and so, so and so. Then I'm thinking, okay, so what? We have heard about all these people, but where are you going with this? So that has to be avoided. You want to make use of these scholars in a way that help you tell the story of where you are going in terms of the flow of the idea, so that we then get to you are not forcing these people to say what you want them to say, but you are presenting their ideas, and you are the one directing this conversation as this host that I spoke about in a talk show. You don't want people that you have invited to now run the show for you and you're just watching. You are still in control. You give people the chance to speak, and if they are now digressing, you tell them to stop. You want to focus on this. So the same thing goes on. So throughout, you as the writer of this proposal, get involved. You are the one directing this. So often I even say, when the topic sentence and the concluding sentence often has to come from you, where you, especially in the closing part, where the so what. Now you've told about this. So what? How does it relate to whatever you are writing? Any questions on this? I think it's quite key that we talk about this, because often we see this laundry kind of list where so and so, so and so, so and so. Then at the end, we're thinking, okay, interesting, but so what? If I just, because it's Pat Thompson, I will put the blog at the end, and I would really encourage you to have a look at Pat Thompson. Pat Thompson says we are not in the business of trying to build a library in the literature review. We are trying to build an argument. So it's not enough to just list people to show that we have read. We still need to show that we have read, but we are trying to build an argument so that we can say there is need for us to conduct this study. And of course, the theory will be more the lens that you're using and which elements of a theory are you going to be using. I spoke about the problem statement already, talking about it being the engine of the whole a project that you are doing. In terms of the methodology, the design,
Doc,
yes.
there is some hands raised up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a hand raised by Elvis. Elvis, you can go ahead and speak. You can unmute and speak.
Yes, Prof.
Elvis, yeah.
Yes, I've got a few questions, but let's deal with this one, which is agent. Is it wise when you're doing a literature review to, for instance, say, Chiwarawara on his book is saying this and that, and then you continue and say, Chiwarawara continues to argue this argument or this concept in his article. Because I've noticed other people will say in his book or in her book, or they will say in his article or in his research findings. How precisely or preferably should one to be more professional in writing a literature review? If you are not, for instance, as you said, not paraphrasing, but going to the surname of the person. Is it wise to still also mention that where did you get this argument? Is it from the book, from the article? Because sometimes you find somebody writing something on the book that he published, and a chapter on the book and the article and maybe the findings on the conference that was presented and probably say not published yet, but in a conference somewhere, or you've seen this also where Chiwarawara is saying it on YouTube and referencing it, or somebody else, referring to Chiwarawara saying this, but now talking about it, let's say on YouTube or on the article, whereas Chiwarawara was saying it on the book. I don't know if I'm making sense. Thank
You're
you.
making a lot of sense, yeah. And Elvis, I think you're one of the few people that have said my name over and over again. All right, no, that's interesting. Now, Later, I'll open it up to the floor. I wonder whether to open it up now to hear what the colleagues think. I can jump in now but is there anyone with a burning desire to answer this from your own experiences, or I should answer? Anyone? Because I believe we learn not from one person, but from a number of people.
Yes, Dr. Joara.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, I've been trying to lower my hand, but for some reason it just doesn't. So I just have to say something though.
Good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. So if I understand, I stand to be corrected, maybe to be guided on the rephrasing of the question, maybe from the participant who asked, in terms of maybe sort of a follow up. If I'm answering in another sort of a trajectory that is not the one in which the question was meant. But from my understanding, it's a style of writing, and certain manner in which we write can begin to sound sort of monotonous or boring. You can't that everywhere you're just citing chiwarawara this, chiwarawara that, within maybe possibly the same paragraph. I always try to, as much as possible, when I'm reviewing literature, it should be a conversation of authors within the field, right? Not only one. Whether I feel good about what that author has been writing, or whether maybe they even wrote this section that I want to write in the manner that I would want to write it. But I am forced, or I'm compelled to try to have a conversation of different authors within the field, authoritative authors within the field, um, speaking to the same issue or supporting the idea that I'm trying to put forward. Right, so it should be sort of an engagement or a conversation of different authors, not necessarily that one author is the one who should be, you have to cite and continue. But from the other perspective, I don't know if I'm also correct on that, if I heard the question well, is the issue of using a third person. Am I correct on that?
I think he mentioned something about the book, to say in his book or in his chapter.
Yes. That's the third person part now, of saying, instead of saying the author's name, then you say in his book. But you can only do that if you are really sure that that person, that it's a he or it's a she, right? But if maybe it's two authors or more in their book, it can work out. But here and there we do use that, so that you don't continue to repeat the name of the person. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Gabriel. I think this was helpful. So I agree. I agree with what you have said now. So let me just add another element as well. So the issue around, so you have answered, the third person, his or her, or that, like you said, it's very important to know whether the person is he or she or whatever they are using. So it's important to be mindful of that. But I understand sometimes, you've said Chiwarawara, and then the next one, I don't want to say again Chiwarawara, and to say he further argues that. So you can do that, for example, so that, like Dr. Gabriel said, it doesn't become monotonous, the same surname over and over, or Elvis now, if that was your surname, for example, you wouldn't want to keep on doing that. The issue of using a chapter to say in his book or in his chapter, in his conference proceeding, or in this conference, I would say that, again, sometimes it depends on the preference of the author, of the writer, and sometimes of where you are even submitting the, okay, this is a proposal, but now sometimes where you are submitting your article. But for me, I would say, if I say in the chapter, there has to be a good reason why I'm mentioning it's a chapter. Or if I'm saying it's a book, there has to be a good reason of saying it's a book. Otherwise, I'll just mention, that this is the idea. Then they will see the book at the end of the laundry list, or sorry, at the end of in the reference list. So it's for example, there are people who even write in his book titled whatever, then they put the title. There has to be a good reason. Maybe the title is capturing something that is quite important in what you are writing, but there has to be a good reason of doing that. Okay. I don't know whether we have answered you. I don't want to also belabor the point, but have we answered you somehow? But you're welcome to get in touch as well. Sometimes it's easier to look at a written piece and then kind of offer suggestions on what you'd have done.
Yeah. Doug?
Yeah.
I also normally see, from what you're saying, I normally see it, especially in economics, when they talk about the wealth of nations, the publication by Adam Smith. So they'll say Adam Smith in his 1817 publication titled The Wealth of Nations. So like you're saying, there must be really something important about that the publication that will necessitate you to have maybe to bring all the sort of details into the text.
Yes. So thank you for that. So it's not overdone. It's not like every book that you are now presenting the title and the year it was published, but maybe because Adam Smith is very important to this discussion way back, talking about the wealth of nation, the invisible hand, and you want to bring that here, then in that kind of case, yes, you can do that. But it's not done everywhere. So thank you for adding that dimension.
Yes, Doc. There was another hand raised by Gibson and Tomike. I don't know if you still want to make your contribution, because I saw Tomike said that part of the question was actually answered in that discussion. So I don't know if you would like to add something there, or you'd like to make a comment. And from Gibson as well, I don't know if you'd like to make a comment. But here from Tomige says, part of my question has been asked. Also, I'd like to ask if Doctor can shed light on minimum number of interviews for MA research. Is 10 acceptable or too small? Can we get like an example of seeing our voices and writing of literature review?
Okay, so it appears to be two things, right? So one deals with what? The interviews. Then another one deals with what?
Yes,
with
the
the
literature
voice.
review. Yeah, the voice,
Yeah.
in literature review, yes.
I can, but I have to pull up something so that I kind of show you an example of that. So I will require like 3 more minutes or something. So maybe let's try to do that later when I ask questions or whatever. Then I can try to look for something that I can pull up and show you as an example of how to ensure that your voice comes out clearly without just being a follower. And by saying this, I'm not saying you can never start a paragraph with a surname. You can in some cases. And of course, again, I keep saying this, sometimes disciplines differ as well. In some they do. But what I've also seen is that a focus on people's names sometimes becomes a challenge because we then fail to get to the point that is being made. So I think Dr. Gabriel mentioned this as well, that he avoids just looking at one scholar throughout a paragraph. That's the variety of sources that I mentioned earlier, where you are focusing on an idea. What are several scholars saying about this particular idea? Are they agreeing? How does this one put it? But it's an idea, it's a point you are looking at, not really. But there are times, of course, that you are looking at contrasting different scholars and where they lean. But often your voice comes out. So here is one way that I used to do, or I used to help people who were struggling with this issue of the voice. So I would say, for example, you would submit your literature review, and it has a lot of these, like every sentence is there's a source, so there's you're quoting someone in every sentence. What I would do then in every paragraph, there is just so and so said that, so and so said that, so and so said that. Then what I would do, I would and I do have one that I'm going to pull up and show you later, but I just need about 2 minutes to get it. But what I would do, I would say, okay, now go back to each paragraph. So we used to, I would work with a student maybe in one paragraph. I say, okay, let's read this paragraph. What is the one thing that is being said in this one paragraph, in this paragraph? Then we take that issue. Maybe it's about laundry list. So I put it up on top. Then I now say, introduce this point in your own words. Then you write a sentence which introduces us to that main point. And then you can now what? You can now bring in as evidence these different scholars who are writing about this particular point. But if you start already with so and so has said this, so and so, it's almost like we've jumped into, we found ourselves into Pretoria and we're wondering, are we still in Joburg or in Pretoria? But if you introduce that, now we are entering into Pretoria. Now, of course, that's a silly way of putting it. But somehow, as the writer, you need to be able to lead the discussion so that I know, okay, we are moving to this issue now. Then you bring people and scholars who write about that particular issue. Then we move from Pretoria, we move to another. We are now in Mpumalanga. And we see that we have transitioned to another section. And those kinds of transitions, they help in terms of you directing the conversation. They talk about the moves that you make in writing. You're moving from this. Once you put however, we see that you're now about to move another direction or something. But if you just have people, Dr. Gabriel has said this, Dr. Kenny has said this, Dr. So-and-so has said this, then I can't quite see you in this discussion, so that becomes the challenge. The one around the number of in-depth interviews that you can have. I'm sorry, I won't be able to say that right now. To say, have these amounts of, I won't be able to say it. I think that you can check with your supervisor. I want to be very careful not to really prescribe to say this is, but do a bit of reading. They often tell you that there is this minimum amount of acceptable kind of interviews that you can have, and within that range, for example, you can get to the point of saturation or something. So, but I don't want to, because people are coming from different disciplines, but I'm willing to have a conversation afterwards if you prefer, because I would have to ask a number of questions about your own field of study. Yeah. All right. Any other questions?
Yes, Doc. There is a hand raised by Gibson. So you can go ahead. You can unmute and go ahead. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Doc. Doc,
Yeah.
I have like a short question with regard to a laundry list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Basically, like I wanna be specific on my project, my research project now, my proposed project now, because like I was trying to to come up with like my voice,
Yes.
like to show my voice. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, like I use, because like my study is kind of similar to what I did from my master's, Mm-hmm. And now, like during my writing, my literature review writing, mm-hmm. I came across with the similar, similar studies, and then with similar studies, and then which is also similar to what I've got from from my fieldwork when I was still doing my master's, and then now I just wanted to use it as my voice during the literature writing. Is it allowed to do so? Or I don't know whether I'm making sense.
The second part I didn't quite get. You said what is it allowed to do what?
Actually, what I got from the fieldwork while I was still doing my master's, is it allowed to use it, as a form of my voice during my literature review writing on a PhD level?
I see. So is this work now published, or you're just drawing from that? But you are going to cite yourself, right? In that. Are you going to cite? Are you going to show where you are getting the information that you are getting it from your masters, or you're just going to write as if you are coming up with it now?
Yes.
the idea then, okay, where I'm going, I'm getting at is that if you decide to use that, you are welcome to, you have to cite. So what's your surname again? You said Zimande, right?
Nzimande, yes.
Yeah, so you have to say Zimande, according to Zimande, whatever, or in brackets. Yeah, you are still citing yourself. You have to show, because that information is already out there, and you have to reference yourself as well from that side. But in the motivation, for example, somewhere else, you could have written, for example, that this is a follow-up study on which builds on my previous study on whatever. You follow what I'm saying? Depending on where you are, how you are presenting this, but you would have to show that you are getting this information from a scholar who is yourself, but your previous work.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, yeah, no, clear talk.
Okay. While you are still on that, I just thought maybe I need to do something here. I need to, I wonder whether, let me stop sharing, then I can share something, because someone asked me. I won't mind even if we stop whenever we stop. I don't mind, because I wanted to really touch on this issue. But I want to, any other questions, or anyone wants to talk about this while I look for that? There's a particular one from our former director when I was still in Cape Town at the Writing Center, who wrote something quite nice on this, and I can show you now in terms of the voice, where to place these kinds of things. So I want to, so you can have maybe 2 minutes if no one wants to say anything, but I want to look for that, and then I can put it up. Yeah.
There is a hand raised by Elvis. I don't know if it's a question or contribution. You can go ahead.
Yeah, Doctor, I wanted to find out in terms of, I'm not sure if you're still going to go there, the first hand or the primary sources and the secondary sources, how wise is it to use on the proposal? Because now I'm looking at, for instance, the press of time. If, for instance, let me put it in a context so that you understand. Let's say Chiwarawara is writing something, and then in that book, he's quoting Elvis. And now I cannot go all the way to find Elvis. Can I also say Chiwarawara is, saying Elvis is saying this, and put that argument without going directly to go and look for Elvis, because that's what my supervisor prefers. But now I want to find out if it's also safe to just go and say Chiwarawara quoted Elvis and said this particular argument on the proposal. How good is it to do that, and which one preferably will you say we should uh, choose for or opt for it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would actually go with what your supervisor is saying. Often you need to go to the primary source, so that you avoid now this, according to what are cited in so and so. It becomes long now. This issue that we are talking about in terms of focusing on names also comes into play in terms of the clarity of the arguments that you are going to be making. Now, there are exceptions. If you can't find that primary source, the first one the original one, you can't find it. So, for example, now, I don't want to give an example, because that one, The Wealth of Nations, you'll find it. But say, for example, you can't find a particular book, but it's saying something very important, and you can't find it anywhere. Well, with those now, you have to do that, cited in so and so. But if there is a way to go to the original one, and then it's better to go to the original one and quote from there. So my point then is that you wouldn't want to have a number of these so and so cited in so and so, so and so cited in so and so. It becomes too clumsy. So it becomes very helpful to then think about going to the first one and getting it straight from the horse's mouth. Yeah. All right. Can you see?
But it won't have an impact in terms of those who are evaluating your proposal, to say, why couldn't he go to the source? Because now, remember, you said that you are not there when they are reading. And now you've done that. Probably, let's say you can't find a book. It's an exceptional case. And you are not there to argue to say, I couldn't find this book and you've done that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Won't it?
it's a valid point. I hear you. But the thing is that if it's one, for example, that you did that, it wouldn't raise my my eyebrows. I think it becomes concerning when I see three kinds of in-text references like that. Then I'm wondering, you can't find this one, and you can't find this one as well. You can't find that one as well. Then that's when maybe people raise that. If it's only one, said once or twice, I don't think. Well, I can't speak for others. I don't know, but in my case, I wouldn't be because we come across these kinds of challenges as scholars. So sometimes, you know, maybe there's something going on here. Yeah, and sometimes I look it up myself and I can't find it. Then I realize, okay, that's the reason why. I think it becomes concerning when it's too much. I think that's what I will say. Yeah. And often you would have had a discussion with your supervisor about that whole thing, and the supervisor would have talked about this. Yeah. All right. I wonder though whether you can see my what I'm showing here. Anyone?
I see
Right.
Dr. Gabriel had his hand up. Oh, sorry. Or we can continue.
You can lower it, Lawrence. I couldn't lower it.
Okay, that's no
Alright.
problem. Okay. Okay, we can proceed
I'm not
though.
trying.
We can, yeah, we can proceed.
Yeah. Dr. Gabriel, I want to hear your voice if you want to say something. Okay. Now, let's say here, writing a literature review in your own voice. Okay, so this is quite nice. What I'll do is I'll add this as well at the end. And I'll show you the other one that I was talking about, the blog by Patter. It's also embedded in this one. So writing a literature review in your own voice, there's someone who asked, how do you have an example? So I don't think even I talked about a citation dump. And this is where you just put a number of scholars in one bracket. It can be helpful if all of them are saying the same. It can be very dangerous if these people are not saying this, these scholars are not saying the same thing, and you are writing as if all these people are saying the same thing. So, the kind of discipline I am, it deals with politics here and there. So I will touch on some of those things here. Say, for example, you are talking about land expropriation without compensation, and if you say, for example, South African politicians agree that land has to be expropriated without compensation, then you put different political parties with some of them which do not agree, then anyone who is reading who knows will say, no, you're just dumping these citations. they don't quite agree. You follow what I'm saying? So if you are putting a number of scholars in bracket, you need to be sure that they are writing about what you have introduced. Yeah. So that it doesn't appear as if you are lying about what you are saying regarding those individuals. Okay. And now let's go to that laundry list now. So in terms of presenting your own voice, there's someone who asked about the own voice. Now, this is an example here from a proposal of a student. The person started the first sentence with this, and it's coming from Kelly and Mills. The good thing about it is that they didn't put Kelly and Mills at the beginning of the paragraph here. They put it at the end of the sentence. So it's a bit better in terms of readability. Then the second one is another one. The third one is another one. It goes on and on. So now we know this person has read a lot, right? But we don't know what they are saying about these different scholars because we don't see any introductory sentence here that introduces us to the main point of this paragraph. We also don't see any closing kind of parting shots or comments on what has been said here because everything is just so and so, so and so, so and so, so and so. So what Sharon Clarence did, she's now in the UK there, but before we were together at the University of the Western Cape, what she did now, she took the same paragraph and look what she did with it. She introduces the main point of the paragraph in orange there. So instead of now just having the goal of ODL, she's into education, something distance, whatever. So the goal of ODL is to widen participation and overcome geographical, social, and economic barriers to education. So she doesn't start with that now. She still keeps this, but she now puts a topic sentence that introduces the main point of the paragraph. So you see now here she says, online and distance learning, ODL, faces several key student-related challenges in addressing its central goal. Then she brings in Kelly and Muse here. Then she puts in these linking, these linking words, yet, and she puts there, then this sense of isolation may then result in, she puts certain things here to just make sure there's a flow. But very important now in terms of the voice is this. She starts the paragraph in her own words. Now, I'm not saying you can do that all the time, but as far as possible, introduce what the paragraph is all about. And then right at the end, she answers the so what question. She goes back now. She doesn't end with another Seward 1993, because now we know what all these different scholars are saying, but we don't know your position in relation to this. So I don't know why you brought all these people, right? But if you introduce like this, then you provide evidence from these scholars. You still show this number of scholars what they are saying. But then look at the end. Sharon Clarence comes back and says, what all of this means for ODO institutions is that increasing student, you see, she's now making sense of these others, however, seem to be whatever. She's making comments on that. She's making sense of that. So that helps you, in brief, to kind of give a bit of voice to what you are writing. So now we know you are the one who introduced. To use my example again, she uses an example of a dinner table, that at the dinner table, you are the one who is facilitating the whole discussion. And so in the same way, in the proposal, you are the one who is facilitating this discussion, and you are doing so with a view of showing us the need for you to conduct this study. Remember, I said it's a sales document. You want to sell this idea, this issue, the problem, and you are saying you want to go ahead and do research on this. The person who asked this, is this kind of helpful? I'll show this and then you can have a chance to read this blog. But is this helpful in terms of seeing what the student did here and what Sharon Clarence added to this? So in the first draft, it's fine to have this. But in the second draft now, you want to direct the reader so that voice comes out a bit more clearly. So it's called something called a point evidence explanation approach to paragraph development, where one main point, the paragraph, you provide evidence from different scholars. You see what Dr. Gabriel said earlier. You see Kelly and Muse here. You see Daniel and others here. You see there are different people who are saying something about the one main thing, which is the issue around challenges that ODL faces. The person who asked, and any other person, is this somehow helpful?
Yeah, they did indicate with a thumbs up.
Wow.
I think it's Tommy K. I think, yeah, they did indicate with a thumbs up. I think they sorted that. Thank you so much for that, Doc.
Yeah, I think I need to try to round up the discussion. Any other questions before I try to round up the discussion?
There is a question in the chat box from Angela. How do you handle a situation where you discover that literature that you cited has been retracted? Maybe you addressed it earlier. I joined the meeting a bit late.
How do you deal? Yeah, anyone who wants to help me out here? At what stage though? Are you still, when you are still doing your proposal, or now you are writing your dissertation or your thesis? Because if so, at what point? It would be nice to know. Okay, someone said yes. Okay, now, yeah, because it depends. I mean, if you have submitted your proposal, for example, and something has been retracted and the proposal has passed, you say at any stage of your writing. Dr. Gabriel, I see you want to jump in here. I have my thoughts. But
yes, Dr. Ken. I think if you can still change it, then you can change it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if I think there's a lot of work that we have cited, especially if you cite journals like Sustainability and other sort of MDPI journals. Okay, let me just take Sustainability out, but I just wanted to give an example of some journals that has been on the face of being predatory journals. You see, so you cite, including some other work that we actually cite, because sometimes we don't really go to the extent of verifying whether that source is coming from a credible, publisher or not, or a credible journal or not. We just go on the internet, whatever that comes up, then we just use it without really verifying. But some of that work is actually maybe possibly published in journals that are not accredited or that are not trustworthy, in predatory journals. So I would say that if you can still change it, if your work is already, let's say you've already finished your study that you are doing, your work is published, then you find that one of the articles that you have cited, it has been discredited and or retracted, then there's nothing that you can do maybe possibly to change it. But if you can change it, then you have to. If you are within a particular stage, then you can change, find others who are supporting the same idea or sort of maintaining the trajectory that you are trying to put forward. Thank you.
Thanks. I think that's very helpful. That if you can do something about it, do something about it. If you can't and it's beyond you, that's why I wanted to know in terms of at what stage. If your dissertation is already published, it's out there, there's nothing you can do about that. But perhaps when you are now writing an article from that master's dissertation or from that PhD, then by all means, look for another source that is valid, not the one that has been retracted. Yeah. Thanks for that. There's another question here that says the challenge with writing a proposal is being concise. How do we ensure that our thoughts are punchy, relevant, but brief? That's a good question. And I think, again, we have writing specialists here. They can assist. I'll just say this, though, before I open it up to the floor. I'll still say that though this sounds simplistic, but the idea is to plan your work and so that you have a number of drafts. I can assure you, even the articles that we read, sometimes they would have gone through a number of processes and reviewers say, well, this is a bit wordy. You need to cut this down. It's just that sometimes we see this final polished work, but the rounds of kind of revisions that would have been done. I remember one that I did, a number of revisions that I did. Because reviewers were saying, do this, you need to do this, you need to do that. Often people see the final product, but then there are other things that have been done. So one way is to have a number of drafts, and then when you have said you want to submit this on the 7th, and then you come back on the 9th after 2 days to look at it again, and then you have other words that are there that you feel, I can cut this. Where you, for example, when you are putting 3 words and it's possible to use 1 word. For example, when you are writing, it's very good. If it's possible to say it's excellent, rather you go to excellent. But it takes time to get to that. And so what I would say is that the issue around planning, so that you have enough time, so that you can revise yourself, and also so that you can send it to trained, sometimes even your colleagues can just to read and say, this, you can cut this down, this is not necessary here, I think you can remove. And also I would say giving your work to your supervisor ahead of time, because if they have more time as well, chances are they are going to give more detailed. But if they are pressed on time and the work is due tomorrow, and you only submit today, and sometimes they might not have enough time. So that's another thing. Another thing is about reading as well. As you are reading, you will come across well-written text and you come across not so written texts that are published. But if you come across a well-written, well-crafted text, sometimes I download those and I save them somewhere. I keep reading those kinds of things because I want to see how others communicate and convey their ideas, and I learn from that. Later, of course, I develop my own that I like to kind of develop. But as you read, you learn. That's why, sometimes this, because of the use of, like shorthand and social media, sometimes even our writing sometimes has kind of been affected. But if you are reading good academic material, sometimes you pick certain things and how people transition, how people move in terms of their writing. So I wouldn't say there's a quick fix to it. I think it's a process, but I think there are ways around it that you can, and of course, you can even request someone to do some editing, as long as they're not writing for you, but the editing part, you can do that. I can tell you now that when I look at the work I wrote last year and I want to look at it now, I will likely change a number of things. But again, that speaks to the issue of revision and the need to revise one's work and also give others to have a look. I know sometimes we don't want anyone to look at our work, but it's helpful at times to ask people to give their input and their suggestions and why they are saying that. So yeah, it's quite a winded kind of response, but I hope it helps. Any other questions? I think we've gone already to the question segment, which is good. Any other questions? I didn't touch on the ethics statement, but I think that one is self-evident. I have it in my slides here, but it's quite important that we adhere to the ethical conventions in our field, doing no harm, not revealing the names where necessary, and all those kinds of things. It's quite important to make sure that we do that and not going to the field before we get that clearance. I think it's quite important, and I think we need to lay that out. One other thing I would say, and I'll go to Dr. Gabriel, I'll say that when it comes to the proposal, throughout, think about the why. So what is it that you want to do? How do you plan to go about it, and why? But that why has to be there. So if you come to the methodology, for example, if you are saying you want to use 15 people, you can find actually studies that show that, for someone who asked earlier, there's a range within which, if you have done this, this is reasonable and acceptable. All that why, it's quite important. You want to show that you've thought about what you are doing and why you are doing it in that particular way. Yeah, Dr. Gabriel. And then there was a hand that was up, then I'll come to you, Nzimande. Dr. Gabriel, go ahead.
Dr. Again, I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the participants that we also have some resources on that are on our model communities. I think Lawrence will give you details on how if you are not enrolled on the communities, then you can be enrolled so that you can access such resources. I presented on clarity, conciseness, and precision in academic writing, where I was focusing on those elements that he was asking and providing some tips on how you can write in a manner that is where clarity is enhanced, conciseness, as well as precision. And I always, it's sort of an example that I always like to use when I talk about the issue of clarity, that in academic writing, it is formal, and we must go straight to the point. That's clarity, isn't it? You don't have to beat about the bush. So I always say that I compare it to public speaking. So when you're writing in academics, comparing it with a public speaker will tell you what they want to talk about, right? Then they talk about it. Then they also tell you what they have spoken about, right? But that is good because you want to capture, the audience to understand to comprehend what you have said. But in academic writing, we cannot do that because that will now it's repetition, we just have to go straight to the point when you are writing in an academic way. So there are some resources that are there that address some of these concerns that some of the participants are having.
Yes, there are resources online on our model communities. There's also workshops that were done on research competences, language rules, grammar, and sentence construction, types of academic writing, tone, clarity, concise, and precision, as Dr. Gabriel stated there. So you should be able to access our model communities, the resources on our model communities together with the previous workshop recording as well. They all have been uploaded on our model communities. So if you do have access, I'm sure most of you will be having access to the model communities, then you should be able to go around there and figure out what you think will work best in your research journey there as well. But if you do feel you do not have access to the model communities, please email us at rcd inquiries.uj.ac.za, and we should be able to assist you in that at uj.ac.za. Thank you.
Thanks, Lawrence. Can I just give a parting shot now? I see that our time has come to an end, but I just want to say three things. That you are a scholar, as a master's student, as a PhD student, you are a scholar. And you are engaging with other scholars in a conversation and you want to add. So as you do so, just because sometimes we are very timid and we are not confident, but that confidence comes from reading, even the writing. You see that as you keep on writing, writing is a process, you become better at it. So if you practice, you often become better. If you do not, it happens to, I think, all of us that if I take 2 years or maybe 3 months before writing an article, when I try to write, I struggle again. Then I get into it. Then I get used to it again. So you do need to read. You're engaged in a conversation. You need to read a lot. You have to be confident in the way that you write, in the way that you convey your thoughts. Of course, don't be overconfident and all that, but it's almost like when you are knocking, because you are sending this proposal, it's like you are knocking, it can't be too faint, as someone who doesn't know whether you want to get in or not, people can't quite hear you. Or you don't want to over knock, if there is any such term, like, are you the police or something? So you want to be moderate in how you knock. So that's the same kind of thing. As you're proposing this, you want to be moderate, but people can hear what you are asking and what you are saying, but you're not overdoing it, but you are still making your point clear. I think I will end here. If there are no other questions, I think I will hand back to the facilitator, to the conveners of this. And thanks a lot for allowing me to speak to the esteemed students today. Thank you.
Dr. Ken?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Kenny. Just to confirm that there was another hand again raised by Gibson there. I think he wanted, I don't know if you wanted to make a contribution or there's a question, but you can go ahead on that.
Dr. Kenny?
Yes.
Sorry, when are you going to be at our department? Because I need something from you, like it's a very small thing.
Yeah. Okay, no, we'll take it after. All right, so I'll be there tomorrow. Yeah.
Tomorrow? Oh, okay. What time?
No, from morning. I have a meeting at 11, so I'll be there.
Okay. No, I'll come to you, straight to you. Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks.
Okay. So in that regard, thank you so much again, Dr. Kenny, for providing us with your expertise on the topic proposal writing, and I'm sure everybody has taken away points or something that they'll definitely be incorporating in their proposal writing or in their research academic journey. And also thank you for taking us through the writing stages of how to craft a detailed proposal for research or thesis. And we really do appreciate you for honoring our invite and giving this presentation. And I'm sure all the participants here have really taken a lot in, and we really do appreciate you here at the Research Capacity Development. And thank you again for honoring our invite and for providing expertise. In that regard, I see there was a hand again by Elvis. I don't know if you want to contribute or you just say thank you. So in that regard, I have posted the feedback survey. As I've stated in the beginning, that we use this for our reporting purposes, and also by filling it in, this ensures that you get a certificate of attendance from us, and also please to provide some kind word to our facilitator, because we do send this feedback survey feedback to our facilitator as well. And in that regard, I don't know if you'd like to add anything extra there, Dr. Kenny or Dr. Gabriel, before we can end the session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So thanks a lot. And I'll just say thanks for asking for kind words, but also just be truthful. So that we improve next time and we do things differently. In case there was something you didn't like or something, then we know how to work around it next time. And thank you.
Yes, and also I just wanted to build on that to say, if you do have any topics that you feel that we can give our workshop on as the RCD unit, please email us at rcdinquiries at uj.ac.za, and you can suggest topics that you think that will be helpful in your research journey or in your academic journey. Then we will organize workshops based on those topics going forward. So I have posted our email address RCD inquiries at uj.ac.za. Then you can email us whatever you feel that you need for us to organize workshop on, and we'll be able to do that on your behalf because, as the Research Capacity Development Unit, we are here to equip all the postgraduate students. So in that regard, thank you so much again, Dr. Kenny, for doing this presentation again on proposal writing. I really, really do appreciate your insights and expertise in that. Thank you to all the participants for availing yourself. Thank you so much. And in that regard, I think I will be closing the session, and have yourself a great, 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 great day. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thanks.